Hello, this is Christina Barton. You're watching Black Tea News. Hello. Welcome to Black Tea News. I'm your host, Christina Barr, and today we're going to be talking about some crazy O.J. Simpson reactions, particularly the one on CNN. That was, when I saw people talking about it and how they would sum it up, I'm like, this has to be some kind of exaggeration, and it was not an exaggeration. It is wholly a crazy opinion. I also want to talk about Kari Lake's video that she put out today that is very pro-choice. Is it like the mainstream kind of pro-choice position? I don't know. It sounds kind of actually mainstream pro-choice position. Is it like abortion lobby? No, absolutely not. Nothing like that. But it's not a pro-life position, and we're just going to be straight about it. We're just gonna be straight about it. And I also want to talk about Gina Carano's beef with Disney, and hopefully we have enough time to get to that, but that'll be the last thing we address. Gina Carano some time ago was let go by Disney, and they maligned her, I would say, out the door. And so she's in a lawsuit that's being backed by Elon Musk, and Disney wants it thrown out. So they did reiterate that she was fired because of her remarks, and even the way they phrase it is interesting. So we'll hopefully get a chance to talk about that. So anyway, thank you for tuning in for the apparently daily dose of sanity. Thank you guys for tuning in. You guys can go to blacktnews.com, check out different content on my website, articles, videos, etc. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation at blacktnews.com/donate, because it does cost a stream and run my website, all that stuff. You guys can support. I do appreciate it. You guys can also check out different merch on the shop, which also does, help out with everything as well. That's a good way to support. If you're watching on Facebook, you guys can send stars. If you're watching on YouTube, you guys can send super chats. If you're watching back later, you guys can, still do super thanks as well. And you guys can also check out some of my books that I've written. I have written more than 30, but I have 17 that are published. Someone asked a question on a short that I had posted yesterday, just looking how do I feel looking back on that day. And I'm glad about all the things that I've accomplished. You could always wish that you could do more, though. Especially since my nephew's ragging on me for not having more Super Kid books out, which I guess that made me really feel like, man, you could really like have another one out. Like, really, maybe that's what you hunker down and work on getting out and finishing, especially before the end of the year, perhaps, so people have kids can have something else new to read during Christmas time. So maybe some more motivation to focus on that particular one. But I have so many going right now at the same time that is just a lot. So but overall, very grateful that I stepped out to go ahead and push my first book. So anyway, let's hop to it with the news. So OJ passed away, and lots of people had lots of interesting opinions about it. And none so interesting, I think. I mean, Mark Lamont Hill had an interesting tweet that was something along the lines of, OJ's a bad person. He did commit murder, but it was right that he got away with it because of the injustice with the world with like Rodney King and other stuff like that. So and I don't think that it is good that someone got away with double murder because some other injustice happened. People need to pay for their individual sins, and we shouldn't be just giving passes for folks because they are black or white, or pick on people because they're particular skin tones or whatever. It's really bizarre, and it's strange that there's people who are just blatant about their feelings and just unashamed with that. And so this was pretty remarkable on CNN here. So let me share my screen with you guys. So we're going to watch this. Um, Now, as people were framing this, there's a lot of people talking about it yesterday. I, you know, didn't necessarily believe just reading it. I'm like, oh gosh, there's got to be some kind of exaggeration. I mean, this here says CNN contributor says that the black community feels connected to O.J. Simpson because he killed white people. Now, if you read that, would you go, "Oh my gosh, someone from CNN actually said that," or you'd be like, "Someone actually said that? That sounds exaggerated." It's really not. It's really not. So anyway, let's hear what she had to say on this subject.
But it was so racially charged because of what had happened just before with Rodney King, but also just how Black Americans feel about policing. It's not like O.J. Simpson was the leader of the civil rights movement of his era. You know, he wasn't a social justice leader, but he represented something for the Black community in that moment, in that trial, particularly because there were two white people who had been killed, and the history around how Black people have been persecuted during slavery. There were just so many layers. And I guess I would just close with this, is that there was racial tension then, there is racial tension now. It might not be the backdrop of the Trump campaign, but until this country is ready to actually have an honest conversation about the racial dynamics from our origin story till today, we will always have moments like O.J. Simpson that manifest, and our country will always be divided if we don't actually deal with the issue of race. But it was.
So I think that's a little bonkers there. Now, I would say that people obviously, and you could listen to some of the jury from back then, re- think about, well, as they reflect back to that time, openly admit that they thought they, as an individual, and they thought like 90% of the jury basically based their opinion off of the Rodney King situation, and it was revenge for that. So they are allowing this black man off who killed these white people because of the beating that the police did against Rodney King. So that's still not a good thing, because obviously there's no justice in that. There's absolutely no justice in that, and obviously sometimes there's no justice in revenge. Uh, but we're supposed to be. It's called the justice system. It's not always accurate. It's not always fair, and sometimes the wrong person goes away, or you don't end up convicting the person who did the crime. But this was someone who was guilty, that people just didn't want him to be guilty, or they didn't care that he was guilty. And to go the step further and to say, well, he killed white people, and to connect it back to slavery. Is that what that was about? That people connected with OJ because he specifically killed white people? Not just because he was a black man going down for a crime, but because he killed white people, as if that was like the positive thing that connected folks to him emotionally and sympathetically. And to say that these sorts of things will continue to happen until we really address the issue of race. And we got to talk about these, but we talk about race all the time. We talk about race all the time, today, yesterday, probably tomorrow. For some time, we talk about it. When I was a child, we had Black History Month in our schools and special programs, and we talked about slavery and all those sorts of things. People are not uneducated on these topics. Are they uneducated on some racial topics? Sure, people learn new things all the time, new information as you grow, and there's more time and more access to knowledge with the internet. Sure. But a lot of people who are pushing, uh, the idea that we need to learn more about race isn't that we need to learn more about history, is that we need to learn it through their lens, their particular lens. So it just kind of sounds like a warning, like, well, if we don't do what's right, well, more situations like this will happen where we just, let murderers off because we're like, yeah, they killed those white people and yeah, slavery, revenge. That is so crazy. It's so cuckoo cuckoo. And instead of having this attitude, like, it's just kind of what happens, that's red flag. We need to have a come to Jesus moment because the people aren't acting unjustly in that scenario, acting totally unjust in that scenario. I preached a sermon and Bible study a couple, maybe about 2 weeks ago. I kind of wanted to deliver it to the church, but I knew I wouldn't be on schedule for a while. So I'm like, okay, let me just go through some Bible study. And I was talking about how the Israelites, when they were in the Exodus, when they had the different plagues, when it got to the plague of the firstborn being taken, that was a plague that was going to impact them too, and they had to put the blood on the door. And the Lord had told Moses that he was going to deliver the people, but he's going to use judgments. And so that was something where he was going to judge everyone. And it talks later in the Bible about the state that the Israelites were in, and they had also embraced these Egyptian gods and stuff. So God wanted to deliver them, but he also had to judge them appropriately for their sins. And they had to put that blood on the door. Wages of sin equal death. So that was the way that was going to pass over them, but otherwise he was going to enact judgment. So he gave him a way out, but he still had to enact judgment. And so the point of the sermon was that the oppressed and both the oppressor could both have sins here. So no matter how you feel about racial divisions in the country or your history and what happened to your ancestors, not even you, no matter how you feel about it, that doesn't mean that your stuff don't stink. Okay? So if this is really how people feel, that it was appropriate back then to get OJ off for murder, for murdering two people because they would think back to slavery. The people who need to repent, obviously OJ, but he needed to go to jail. But the people who got him off needed to repent of their sins. The people who were happy that he got off for that need to repent of their sins. That is wicked. It's wicked. And it doesn't matter just because, again, that you were oppressed or other people were oppressed. You are sinful in your nature as well. And also read something that Frederick Douglass had written. I don't have it up in front of me, but how he talked about how he came to Christ and how he realized that the slave owner and the slave were both sinners in need of a savior. He didn't say, oh, I want to get saved so we can just defeat these evil white people. It's like, no, I am a sinner, even as a slave. And I am accountable for my sin. That is why I need a savior and I need to repent. And even though these people are doing me wrong, I have love for them and I want to see them reconcile with the Father. So that's a big boy kind of attitude to have. But we, folks think that's soft or whatnot. It's really easy to hold on to anger and bitterness and resentment. It's difficult to step forward and actually build something positive. Having a civilization that you can just throw away justice because of feels off of things that didn't even involve slavery, didn't involve OJ in the present day or the people he killed. What you can't look objectively at what the individual did. That's insane. That's insane. But that's, so much with the social justice stuff. It's about past grievances that are even beyond you, even outside of your control, way back in even in your history, but you bring those to the surface, and then all of a sudden people can't even be held accountable for their own actions. So this was wild. I don't know what happened after she said that. I would imagine she wasn't really that challenged because she's like the token black person talking about that situation right there. So I don't. All I saw was this clip. Um, Maybe somebody went off on her. I doubt it, but that was wild. Absolutely freaking wild. So again, if you have those kinds of attitudes where it's okay for some to enact revenge against people who don't deserve it, or to give a pass to people who don't deserve it because it's something that doesn't involve them, you need to just look in the mirror and again repent, man. And if you're not religious, like just reevaluate your life and go get some help from like a professional or something who's not woke. Make sure the psychiatrist doesn't have pronouns in their bio. Make sure they do not have that in the bio. And OJ, as I said, he wasn't like some kind of black, leader. He lived in a suburban area and stuff. And then after he got out, after he got acquitted and stuff, he didn't live his life trying to do the most good possible. He kind of went wild, you know. And he was a weird guy. And then he wrote that book said that was I did it. But it was like if I did it. And the family who ended up getting, not his family, but the family of the people killed, they sued, and I think they got the rights to that book, and so they were able to shrink it down, the if, to like really really small, for the if I did it. But what a creep. What a creep. And then he went to jail for something stupid, but he died a free man. But people's attitudes around this is just insane. And again, if this woman on CNN really feels that that is the case for black people, and she's not like utterly embarrassed about that, she needs to check herself. But if she's correct, then we need to have a come to Jesus moment, because that is not good. So anyway, I'm going to move on before I continue repeating myself. So I got to talk about this video with Kari Lake, man. I got to talk about this video with Kari Lake. So before I talk about that, there was a let me show this clip of Ron DeSantis where he was asked about the Biden administration attempting to close the gun show loophole, and he just explained that they were lying and they were stupid, and that it's mostly propaganda. So I mean, this is how leaders should shoot down dumb stuff that the media and the Biden administration and all them bring up. There's a lot of propaganda about so many issues: guns, abortion, border, the economy. Biden's approach, the Democrats' approach to the economy is just like, don't believe your eyes when you go to the grocery store and you have to ring up the chicken. Like, the economy is great. What are you talking about? They expect you just kind of shut up and be grateful, because all these jobs that are added, a lot of the jobs are actually like government jobs, by the way. So that's great. There's a lot of propaganda, but you got to have the knowledge and the passion and the boldness to just shoot that stuff down. So here's Ron DeSantis shooting that stuff down.
This is typical propaganda. If I have a gun store and you come in, you're required to run a background check. If I bring my inventory to a gun show, I still have to do the same thing as a FFL. There's no difference between a gun show and being in your store. And so that is something that really I think is a myth. Clearly, they don't have legislation. They need legislation if they're going to do anything. So it's another example of Biden just acting through executive fiat. He's going to get struck down finally when the whole pistol brace rule, that's unilateral. He does not have authority to do this. So, and the same thing with the student loan bailout. I'm somebody, I think the colleges should be responsible to back the student loans because they've really benefited with these kids going into debt. So I'm not unsympathetic to it, but I'm not supportive of telling a truck driver he's got to pay the student loan for someone that got a degree in gender studies. That is not right. And so, but that's a debate you have legislatively. With Biden, he's already gotten slapped down on it. Now he's getting slapped down again. He's going to get, I think but he's doing the same thing basically. Abusing law. If this was something he could have done, why didn't he do it on day one? Because people know that. So I think that this is an example of, who governs our society. We have a constitutional system that was enacted at this country shortly after this country's founding. And it's very clear on who has the power to legislate, who is charged with executing those laws. What Biden is doing, and he's not the first president to do it, but what he's doing is he's taken the bureaucracy and this fourth branch of government, and he's using that to legislate without popular consent. And that's wrong. That is not the way we're supposed to be governed. And in this instance, it's obviously on a false premise because people that have gone to gun shows know when you buy a fight, you do go through background checks. They can't they're not exempt from it just because they happen to be at a gun show. And that's been the law for a long, long time. But it's a symptom of a larger problem of governing by executive fiat, doing these executive orders through the bureaucracy when you can't get this done through Congress.
Beautiful, right? Explaining the lies, even having some alternate sort of solutions like the holding the schools accountable, but explaining things succinctly. That's what you expect out of your leaders when we have certain positions. Now, I've seen people say, like on the abortion issue, or just stuff in general, like, you vote for the platform, not the person. It's like, okay, well, if they're not adhering to the platform, what are you gonna do? Or I've heard people say that when it comes to people running for office, they have to go by what the people want in order to get elected. Well, the truth is that if you feel passionate that you need to run because you want to make a positive change in the government or whatever, people's lives around you, whether it's local government or something on the federal level, hopefully you want to make sure people's freedoms are protected, that liberty reigns, that you have good solutions to problems that are around, and you believe that the solutions that you have are going to best impact the community. Now, there might be positions that you have that need to be explained, that may not be extraordinarily popular, but you listen to your neighbors and your friends and you let them, maybe they persuade you a bit as you come to understand their opinions. But perhaps if you can make a good case, which you should be able to make a good case for running for office, you persuade them to what is the correct thing and why your way is just, why it's moral, why it is constitutional, and why your way should be enacted. On the flip side, you will have opponents that will belong to another party that believes that government sort of functions in a different way, that will have a list of proposals that are different than yours, and they will go ahead and campaign on that platform, and then people will go out and they will choose which platform is best, and then the people will have a say in where things need to go by having that option. And then there will kind of be the mandate that these people are going to enact these things because the people voted for that individual to lead with other folks. So this idea that people have to change all these different opinions to get elected, shouldn't you, if this if these were your original feelings, I guess, when you joined in on the race and when you won your primary, because you first have to go through your primary with folks who usually agree with the things that you want anyway. So you represent their position, you explain what you want to do, and then they back you. And then you run in the general, and they don't expect you to start just kind of flipping on things, or, you know, maybe, I mean, people, we understand that people moderate a bit, move to the center a bit to pick up those independent votes, maybe some crossovers, but you don't expect big changes from folks usually, right? Not really. And if you're not lockstep with the people, they'll let you know because they'll vote for the other person and not you. And if you don't represent the people and where they're at, you'll find out. But as an elected official, you're there to, represent the best needs of the people, but the people elected you because they felt that you were the one best suited to enact the will of the people. So some things that Kari Lake said in her video disturbed me. And I it's really pro-choice, and there's really no way around it, and some people are out there making some excuses for it. I think this video, compared to like her statement that she made the other day, the statement wasn't good. This video is worse though. This video is worse. Like Michael Knowles said, it was um he said he had liked let me see if I had liked his okay, it looks like I didn't like his statement about it, but it was basically, he said this is ill-advised and this was unwise, and and then Kari Lake's war room replied back to Michael about it and had the dumbest response. But we'll get to that after we watch her video about this issue. And if they don't want abortion to be the highlight of this campaign, then they could just stop talking about it at the very least, or try to minimize their conversations about it, but trying to get out in front of it. And not, people are like, well, it's a states' rights issue. Okay, but you have Kari Lake and also Donald Trump undermining pro-life legislation, pro-life victories. So that's obviously not a good thing. And if you have power, if you're in the seat of power and you're going to undermine the advancement forward of protecting life, that's obviously not a good thing. And people have to question, well, are you the one that folks want to take all the way? Now, I wish that people of Arizona had these discussions fully, or were more aware prior to approaching like general election time. But it is what it is now, and you have to make the decision. Is it good to have leaders who will give you a lot of what you want but sacrifice the big things, or is it good to teach them a lesson so someone else doesn't make the same mistake? And so a lot of people are pointing out that Kari Lake was just a Democrat not too long ago, voted for Obama, and she made a flip and she said stuff about election interference or whatever and was pro-Trump. And then all of a sudden, we got to make her our MAGA queen. That's not a good way going forward, guys. It wasn't a good way before, but hopefully people can learn some lessons that you cannot base your support around someone because they said a few things that you like. You have to not only ask them questions about the policies, but you have to make sure that they understand the ethical framework of them. It's really easy to say that abortion is bad. Can you explain why? Like these exceptions that they're going to keep mentioning, I think if you actually ask them some deep questions about it, they would fold. They would fold. So anyway, let's watch it. It's about 5 minutes.
This total ban on abortion that the Arizona Supreme Court just ruled on is out of line with where the people of this state are. The issue is less about banning abortion and more about
Now, let's listen. She said what?
This total ban on abortion that the
Okay, so she called it a total ban. At least the mainstream media, where I've listened to them talk about this a bit, calls it a near total ban. Calling it a total ban gives people the impression that if a mother was dying, that she would not even be able to have an abortion. And at least that's not the case. So you could at least say things like it is a near ban, total ban, instead of saying it is a total ban. Because there is an exception, like all pro-life laws in the country have, for the life of the mother. But let's keep going.
The Arizona Supreme Court just ruled on is out of line with where the people of this state are. The issue is less about banning abortion and more about saving babies. I agree.
The issue is less about banning abortion and more about saving babies. Less about banning abortion and more about saving babies. Why do you think people want to ban abortions? Now, she's going to go on to list some other sort of things that she thinks will perhaps lead to less abortions, and I think those conversations are good and worth having, but I think for many reasons that you need a ban. You need a ban because people shouldn't have the option to do this evil thing, especially like electively and stuff, right? And it's not just this whole entire video. You'll see that she'll frame it around the women making the choices and what's good on their lives, etc. And she says it's about saving babies, but she doesn't really frame it in the way that abortion is about killing the babies, and that's why it needs to be banned, because you shouldn't be allowed to do that. And I said it yesterday, and I'll keep saying this: no pro-life person, nobody in the GOP, nobody should be having conversations about abortion with someone who is pro-choice without putting it in the proper context that there is a human child being killed with the procedure, every procedure, unless it's a failure and they somehow survive. So if you're going to do a whole entire video without acknowledging really the brutality of that, that's a big red flag there. It's a big red flag to have a victory. First of all, either the Supreme Court ruled to the letter of the law, or they didn't. And if they didn't, then that's a bad ruling. If they did, it's a good ruling, and don't throw a hissy fit at the Supreme Court. Like Trump, you thought the Supreme Court Alabama made, a mistake, or people were talking about them. I'm like, no, it sounds like they made the right call. Or people were mad at the Texas Supreme Court when it came to the Kate Cox story. I'm like, no, they definitely made the right call, the only call that they could make given the law and given what her doctor said. Because her doctors didn't say that she needed that abortion to save her life. On the contrary, they said her life wasn't in imminent danger. So if they can only have exceptions basically for life of the mother after the 6 weeks, what do you do? The doctors didn't say that she needed one. And they reiterated in the ruling that if you have a medical emergency, you can have an abortion. But instead of explaining the actual case, the actual details of it, you can still feel sympathetic to her or believe the law is wrong. But to have people like Chris Christie and other folks say, oh, the Supreme Court got it wrong. No, they didn't. Look at the law and go read her actual case. They didn't get it wrong. So you cannot like it, which apparently she doesn't like it. And that's why they said they got it wrong, because it's out of lockstep with what the people of Arizona want. Before we get too far, let me just put this in perspective. Let me just put this in perspective. Imagine that the Civil War, the American Civil War, has ended. Okay. And imagine that you got people coming into Galveston, Texas, and they see there's still slaves there. And they're like, what are you doing? You won the Civil War. You guys are not slaves anymore. So stop doing slave stuff. You can still work here, but they got to pay you, and you're free to leave if you want to go. Imagine that sort of victory. Imagine that human rights violation just being tossed away. And before they break out in their celebration of dancing and all this stuff, this is like the origin of Juneteenth, by the way. Before they bust out in victory and celebration, Kari Lake pops out of nowhere and says, I've been all over Texas, and this is not in step with the rest of Texas. Wouldn't that be crazy? Wouldn't that be crazy? Especially if everyone's like, you know what, Kari Lake, she has a point. The people of Texas really like their slavery. We got to do something about this. We got to make sure the legislature makes some kind of exception here. And if she says so, like, we have to consider what she's going to say later in the video. The fight that we have to consider that the slave owners, the financial difficulties that they have sometimes. And I support slavery in some circumstances. Wouldn't that be crazy? Wouldn't that be crazy to say those abolitionists who finally got something that they wanted, had to fight so long for, that was overturned? Like, oh shoot, we got to fix this. Or when you achieve some kind of big moral victory, do you go along with it? Now, I understand that they're going to do a referendum and people feel like you cannot make that big of a leap to go to like only life of the mother, you know, from like 15 weeks or whatever, which was what like Ducey signed. Was this? No, not Ducey, Doug. Anyway. To think that we can't just celebrate here and be happy is crazy. And she's actually calling up and urging the legislature to write something in so this law doesn't have to go into effect. And I understand people freaking out, and you could say people aren't ready for it, but you could at least not do videos where you say it's a total ban and really make a pro-choice case. So let's keep watching, because she really does have a pro-choice video here.
Agree with President Trump. This is such a personal and private issue. I chose life, but I'm not every woman. I want to make sure that every woman who finds herself pregnant has more choices so that she can make that choice that I made. I'll never forget.
It is Doug Ducey, by the way. She wants there to be more choices so women can make the choice that she made. This is literally the pro-choice argument. The pro-life argument is that we all have a right to life. We all have that inalienable right to life. We all inherently have human value. And when our life begins, that's when we need to be protected against violence. You do not have a right to purposely terminate that life. That's the pro-life position. It's based in the right to life. The pro-choice position is, maybe I wouldn't do it. Maybe I really don't like it. but I want you to have the choice to be able to terminate that life if you would like. If you would like to choose life like I did, then that is great. That is pro-choice. That you believe people have the choice to kill their children. And saying, well, I want to make sure there's as many options as possible. Imagine if someone said, let's go back to her original statement. This isn't about banning rape. It's about making sure women aren't raped or something, or men make the choice to not rape or something along those lines. And to say, I want to give men as many options as possible so they can make the choice to not rape like I choose to not rape. Fine and great. But wouldn't you still like a law on the books that says you can't do this evil thing, and if you do, then you're going to go to jail? And in some places, if you're in Florida, for example, and you do it against a minor, you're going to probably be executed. Like, wouldn't you still want that on the books? Wouldn't you still want that on the books? What? Who wrote this? To think that someone made a script, or maybe she's going all off the cuff, but you know, I wouldn't imagine that she does everything off the cuff. But she had to have a team that they sat down and thought about these things and was like, yes, let's film this. And then they had to cut it. They had to edit it and put some music behind it. And make sure that glow on her skin is just effortless. Or not effortless, but it's super glowy. Like, they had to do all these things. And this is the message that she came up with. That it's not about banning abortion, it's about saving babies. No, you needed a ban on abortion. It's not about banning slavery. It's about making sure the people don't want to choose slavery. Okay, well, some people are always going to go for the free labor, babe. Some people like to choose wickedness, especially when you convince them that it's not wicked. And when you give them all these sorts of excuses and you frame it in a way that it's good for them, and pretend that there's no victims for their sins when they commit them. And it's just kind of reasonable to do these sorts of things. Let's keep watching because we are not even a little bit through this.
The first time I got pregnant, taking that pregnancy test, looking down, and I was excited, but I'll be honest, I was afraid as well. I was nervous. I was anxious. It's natural for women to be nervous and anxious when they're pregnant. I never would ever assume that any woman had the same exact feelings I had or situation I had. We know that some women are economically in a horrible situation. They might be in an abusive relationship. They might be the victim of rape. I agree with President Trump. We must have exceptions for rape, incest, and the life of a mother.
Okay. A lot of people agree with those exceptions, but what did that have to do with the economic situation? Why did you bring that up? And you're right. Not everybody's woman situation will be the same as you. So not everyone is going to have an easy pregnancy, feel that they're secure in their pregnancy, that they'll be able to easily raise their child. I don't know her background, that other than her, being a TV woman. Yeah, not everybody's going to have the same experience as you. That doesn't, but despite how people feel about it and their economic status, it's still not okay to kill that child. So if you want this video to be about the exceptions, you didn't have to say, you know what, I just want women to have all these choices. And by the way, all my situations aren't the same. And oh, what if they're poor? Like I had wrote a status last night on Twitter about, like, it freaks me out. It's so weird when people bring up financial status as a reason to have an abortion. And that is a large reason why people will abort. And that doesn't even mean that the women who choose abortion are destitute. when they say that it's for financial reasons. Maybe it's just an inconvenience and they'll have to live a little uncomfortably or whatever. But it's odd to me because we definitely grew up on some rough times. There were times when we had Christmases, like tons of toys, and there were other times it's like, okay, dinner is a $2 Taco Bell meal, you know. So uh we definitely had it rough sometimes, but I never looked at my youngest sister and said, if only she wasn't here, mommy had an abortion. No, life is always worth it. And if that's not your message, ma'am, then you are not pro-life. You're not pro-life. Again, if you want to mention those exceptions, why'd you bring up the other stuff? And still nothing about the babies themselves. And by the way, I don't like the exceptions. Well, first of all, people mention, if they mention incest and it's from a rape situation, it would still fall under rape. So it seems kind of redundant. But if it's because you think that they might have, I don't know, some kind of disability or something, then you are basically having a eugenic sort of position on there. But anyway, to the rape, if it is wrong to, if you are listening to me and you believe in this exception, that's fine. But one day you may run into a pro-choicer because they are asking these questions. I saw Destiny ask Jedediah on her podcast. On her podcast, he got the best of her here. And she's like, it's wrong to kill babies. Abortion is bad. It's wrong to kill babies. Well, he believes it up to the point of consciousness, and he gives a little leeway from what his understanding of when consciousness begins. And 20 weeks is basically up to the point where he would like abortion to be legal. And he doesn't care how many you have before then. You could have 100 abortions before then, but as long as it's before 20 weeks, he doesn't care. So he's an interesting guy. But she's like, abortion's wrong, abortion's wrong, abortion's wrong, abortion's wrong. And she's like, in case of like, rape. And he's like, wait a second. I thought abortion was wrong. And she's like, but it's just hard. He's like, why is it hard in that circumstance? You said it's a baby. You can't kill a baby. So she didn't really have a good reason other than it feels like it's too tough to say that you have to not kill the baby in that situation. But if it's wrong to kill the baby, and this in general, if it gets to this situation where it's dictated by the circumstances of how the child was conceived, you are saying it's wrong to kill babies. However, it's not wrong to kill these babies. We can discriminate against these babies over here, and we can allow violence against them. That's what the exception is, and that's how people need to phrase it. An abortion ban is not something being done against a mother. It is not something being done against a mother. It is a prevention of violence. It is a prevention of violence against someone else. That is what the ban is. That is what the ban is. No one is tying someone down and saying you have to give birth to a baby. The baby is going to come out, dead or alive. Birth is going to happen. It already exists. We're saying you don't have the right to kill them. It is really simple, but these cowards will not even make the case. I played that clip of Ron DeSantis showing him making the case for debunking the Biden administration on guns and loopholes, and he brought up student loans, and he just laid it out boldly and clearly so people can understand very simply. And that's what you need to do. You need to take your case to the people, take your case to the press. And this is her caving and going on. And she's going to talk about her family a lot, but let's keep watching.
We as American people don't agree on everything all of the time. But if you look at where the population is on this, a full ban on abortion is not where the people are. The issue is less about banning abortion and more about saving babies. And we can do that We are only as strong as our greatest institution, which is the family. You know, I had a real eye-opening experience this last summer. I had the opportunity to visit Hungary, and it completely changed my view of how we should deal with this complicated, difficult issue. In Hungary, what they did I thought was so amazing. They started with their tax rate. And when you get married, they give you a cut in your tax rate. When you have your first child, they give you another cut. By the time a mother has 4 children, she never pays taxes again. That's called a baby bonus. I think we should do that here in America. We bail out banks and multinational corporations all the time. When's the last time we've given an assist to a struggling mother in a family? So many young people are saying, I don't ever think I could become a mother or father because heck, I can't even afford to get by on my own. How would I ever become a parent? They see the economy faltering. They see crime rising. They're working 2 and 3 jobs, and it's still not enough to get by. We need to make sure.
So this saying like, hey, we want to make things more, we want to make things better for a family is fine, but I don't think that maybe it'll lessen some abortions, but like the tax plan of like, hey, assuming that you could only get the benefits of the taxes being cut down if you're married, because I certainly wouldn't want to do that for people who aren't married, but and maybe that would incentivize more people to get married in those kinds of situations. But 86% of the abortions are from unmarried people. So if people still choose to sleep around with people they definitely don't want to marry, and they they're going to keep having those abortions. So I don't think you can just I don't think you can just simply bribe the wickedness out of people, Kari. Especially when you're not calling out the wickedness. I see a comment, just FYI, I see quite a few comments. You guys are talking amongst yourselves. I don't have a producer. I'm doing everything myself. So to try to keep track of, you know, what's going on, I don't read. I'm not always able to read all your comments. I do prioritize if someone is doing a super chat or something like that. But I'll go ahead and at least read. Um, I'm not going to go through all your comments, Miss Wendy, but there was something along the lines of not accepting the Lord as your savior is worse than abortions, and again, it's a choice. So, are you pro legalizing rape and murder and theft because all those things are choices? We have laws and governing authorities, and that was something that the Lord recognized that we were able to do and have an act under according to those laws and so on. So it is well within our capability to put something on the books to stop people from being killed. When people try to bring up free will or choice, God gives the choices to do X, Y, and Z. Yes, including the things that I'm pretty sure that you would like to remain illegal. It's a really bad argument. And I saw you say something like, am I ignoring you because you're right? No. You are not right. So I hope that answered your question. You don't have to, I don't know, feel so empowered or entitled to call folks out. I'm trying to run my show. It wasn't personal that I wasn't getting to your question as soon as possible. All right. Let's keep watching.
Or that our economic policies are growing our economy and making our young people prosperous as well, so they can live that American dream. And the American dream means being able to afford to have a family and watch those beautiful children grow. Ask any mother, no matter what she's accomplished in life, and she will say, my greatest accomplishment, my greatest achievement is being a mother. Ruby came out. She was born on a Sunday morning at 6:39 a.m. And I'll never forget that moment of watching my baby come out and holding her for the first time. Ruby was just 10 months old when I found out I was pregnant with Leo. She quickly warmed up to Leo, and they've become just the best of friends. And it's just been such a joy to watch them grow up. I want more women to have that joy and that achievement. I want to write legislation, vote for policies that will help make that a reality. That is what makes our country great. I'm so honored to call President Trump friend. I'm so honored to have his endorsement. And I 100% agree with him as a mother and as a woman. He did so much to help save babies and protect women, bringing down the unconstitutional Roe v. Wade, which people on both sides of the issue admitted was unconstitutional, and allowing we the people to decide this issue. Right now, we're in that part where we're deciding the issue. And yes, it's painful. Yes, it's difficult. Yes, there are emotions that are so strong, and people are angry, and people are sad, and they're furious. This is the difficult part. I didn't get into politics because I thought it was going to.
Why is it difficult, Kari? Why is it difficult? Why is this debate difficult for people? If it's not a baby, if it's not a life, then it obviously shouldn't be difficult. But if it is a baby, then of course it's obviously difficult, because people realize that there's something immoral about it. And if people still want to do it, they certainly cope and they dig their heels in the issue. But did you notice how you didn't really talk about abortion being child murder? And people don't like when you say murder, because it's obviously still legal, but it is a premeditated, deliberate, like, killing. It is at least a homicide, right? So and it is unjust, I would say. And you're like, well, how did you say it's unjust? If she brought up finances. Would you kill your child over financial benefit outside of the womb? And it's probably not a good, just reason to do it while they're inside of you. You're just using the fact that it's inside of you as a flex to get away with it. So yeah, it's difficult for folks, sure. But you make it more difficult to convince people to come around to the pro-life position with messages like this. And I understand she wants to be sympathetic. She's showing her family, like, oh, I'm a mom. I'm the only mom in this race. I love my kids. I want people to choose life. And that's great. I want people to choose life too. But you know what? People could just easily look at this message here and be like, yeah, she's right. It's difficult. So I'm going to have an abortion so I can have the opportunity to choose motherhood at some point in time when it's just more comfortable for me. You have to point out that abortion is immoral. You have to talk about it being immoral. She talked about how what she called a total ban, a near abortion ban, is bad and wrong, because it doesn't have the exceptions that she wants, but she hasn't explained why abortion is bad. And it should be obvious, but she needs to talk about it every opportunity she can get. She needs to talk about every opportunity she can get. But I understand she's running for Senate and she doesn't want this to bring down her race. I understand that, but here she is. Yet here she is. And I don't think this is going to make more independents really want to vote for her, maybe a couple, whatever. But it's definitely going to make a lot of pro-life people feel like they cannot back her. Or, I'm sure there'll still be a lot of like evangelicals that go out and stomp for her or whatever, because what are your alternatives? But it's hard. Some evangelicals just kind of feel like they need to tap out anyway. So if you're going to make the pitch, no, this is really important. We have to vote against the evil. And she's out there calling the legislature to be like, we need more abortion. We need to allow more abortions in this bill. You're getting to the point where they might not think that you're a good option. Perhaps you're the lesser of two evils. But a lot of people don't believe in voting for the lesser of two evils.
It's going to be easy. I'm okay with the difficult parts. And right now, we're in that part where we need to work through this issue. And thankfully, as we're working through this issue, it's not just going to be the abortion extremists calling the shots. People who are pro-life have the ability at this moment, thanks to President Trump, to be involved in this process, to come up with policies that will work to help women and save babies. We knew that when this issue was sent back to the states, there would be debate, there would be argument, there would be teeth gnashing, but we're going to get through this. We are Americans. Heck, we're Arizonans. We're some of the toughest people out there. We're going to work through this. And on the other side, we're going to come out much better for it. They want this issue to bring down our country. They want Americans at each other's throats. And this issue has the ability to bring down our country or help save our country. And I want to help save our country. As your senator, I will oppose federal funding for abortion and federal banning of abortion. I'm not going to Washington, D.C. to impose federal restrictions on something that's already been sent back to the states. I'm going to Washington, D.C. to secure our borders, strengthen our families, and help President Trump make America great again.
I just wouldn't be like eager to vote in another like Lisa Murkowski or something like that. If I was in Arizona, I'd be, that I wouldn't. Mm. Oh boy. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. So let me let me see if I can find Knowles' comment really quick. Oh, here we go. He said, "This is profoundly ill-advised. This is a profoundly ill-advised approach to the issue that will repel pro-lifers while failing to attract abortion supporters. It's one thing to downplay abortion as a matter of prudence during a campaign. It's quite another to proclaim Democrat talking points from 2008." So that is what Michael Knowles said, and he is correct. And so Kari Lake War Room said, "Please explain how policy shaped like Victor Orban's example in Hungary is modeling the Democrat talking points," as if we just ignored that the whole video was like 5+ minutes and not just that little section. He said, "To my knowledge, Victor Orban never said abortion is such a personal and private issue. I choose life, but I'm not every woman. I want to make sure that every woman who finds herself pregnant has more choices, that she can make that choice that I made." And so Kari Lake's War Room said, "We are in agreement here. Orban never called himself a woman," and then shared his personal experiences about being a mother of 2 children. Yeah, because obviously he's not a woman. So that was a dodge, trying to be snippy, and that was just the War Room has as this page has posted some trash stuff before, but that was in a way a good way to address this really legit criticism from Michael Knowles and other people as well. It wasn't appropriate. It's not a good video. It's not even a good video because the belief that people should have this choice to battle it out, um and that you're trying to at this very moment make it so that there's more abortions. You're very unhappy. And to me, to be like, okay, we really need these exceptions, I can understand why people want the exceptions, but you're willing to so what's the compromise that they want? Because I'm assuming it's not just rape, incest, and life of the mother. I'm assuming that they want it further, perhaps to go back to 15 weeks. And if you go to 15 weeks, then that basically you're allowing like 95%, perhaps more, abortions to occur. So I don't think you're some grand hero because you want like 95% of abortions to be able to happen. But if she's like for a ban outside of like those issues, what's the point of trying to force people to, if the choice is what is now versus what they had before, you're gonna let nearly like 950,000 babies die because of you want to make room for less than 1%, when your position is based off of discrimination. That just seems like not a good deal, not a good strategy. But okay. Okie dokie. But let me see if I can uh maybe I retweeted it. There was a news report where she actually they were reporting that she was, I think it was on MSNBC, that she was actually calling legislators to get them to change the law for the meantime. So, and I know they're trying to like limit the damage of the, oh, it's right here. Perhaps limit the damage of what could happen in the referendum in November. But you got to at least fight for what you believe in.
One Republican legislator tells NBC News that GOP Senate candidate Kari Lake is now calling Arizona House members. She's calling them, urging them to repeal this 1864 near total ban on abortion, Rena. Clearly a recognition of just how politically perilous this all could be. But will that be enough for candidates like Lake? One Republican legislator tells NBC News.
So, before moving on from this topic, Trump weighed in, by the way. So again, they don't want this to be about abortion, but they have to spend a lot of time convincing their own base to get on page. So they're continuing to bring this to the forefront. He said the Supreme Court in Arizona went too far on their abortion ruling, enacting and now approving an inappropriate law from 1864. So what makes it inappropriate? That you cannot kill your baby? That's an inappropriate law? I can think of some other laws from that time period that were inappropriate, but that's not one of them, bruh. So now the governor and the Arizona legislature must use heart, common sense, and act immediately to remedy what has happened. Remember, it is now up to the states, and to the goodwill of those that represent the people. We must ideally have the 3 exceptions for rape, incest, and life of the mother. This is important. Democrats are the extremists. They support abortion up to the moment of birth and even execution of babies in some cases after birth. This should not be. Arizona legislature, please act as fast as possible. So there was the word on the street, and what Trump hinted at, but was that he was going to try to push forth some kind of compromise that was like 15 weeks or 16 weeks or something along those lines. And perhaps that's where his heart is, because he did say that the 6-week bill in Florida was terrible, even though that has the exceptions of rape, incest, life of the mother, bodily, like extreme bodily injury, or trafficking. So it has, more than the exceptions that he wanted, but he still said it was terrible, assuming because it's 6 weeks. So if you want abortion to be available up until like with week 15 or something along those lines, and you're going around calling the Democrats the extremists, what, because they want 5% more babies dead than you do? Because you want 950,000 versus they want like 1 million or something. Like that's kind of crazy. You don't have a moral position. This is not a moral position. This is not a moral position when you go around. You can't say it's the states' rights and then go and you be the voice, the head of the party, basically, and then undermining these pro-life victories, and then still expect people to call you the most pro-life president that we've ever had. So, and how you must use heart, common sense, and act immediately. So how I gun to his head, I don't think he could really explain his position on this. And use heart. I'm sorry. I think you should not kill babies. So sorry, Trump, you're wrong here. You are wrong here indeed. Last thing I want to mention before moving on is that to water down your principles and your beliefs is not a good way to win. And I can understand, like Michael said, if you're trying to move the needle or when you're trying to win, but Kari Lake is doing more than that. But to say that we basically need to adopt a Democrat position, perhaps it's not a current Democrat position, but it's the position that wasn't too far long ago. It is a Democrat position. I mean, there are pro-life Democrats, but largely like how their position used to be not too long ago. Kari Lake is saying things that Nancy Pelosi said not too long ago, right? So if we have to adopt those positions in order to beat the Democrats, that's a little crazy to me. I don't want to become Democrats to defeat the Democrats, because you could say, but we really, really need to win though. It's like, okay, well, why do we really, really need to win? Well, we really, really need to win, which the biggest issue I would say, and a lot of people are pointing out, the border is just absolutely terrible. And you have all these people coming in, and the fear is that the Democrats are going to basically buy all these votes permanently with something like amnesty, and all of a sudden they'll have these voters that will vote for them, and the Republicans won't be able to compete, and it'll basically be one party rule. And that is a genuine fear that I can totally say that happening. We talked about that on the show before. However, if we have to become Democrats in order to stop Democrats from having one party rule, how do they not already have one party rule right now? If that's the case, if we have to be them to win, haven't they already won? Haven't they already won if that's really the case? And if we really need to be them to appeal to the country, doesn't that mean they already have the country and they're the ones who truly represent the country? See, when you have elections, you give people options and they decide what's best. But you need to have those differences. I'm not saying there's not other differences, sure. But you know, as far as fiscal responsibility, that was a big thing we used to preach. Do we not pass a lot of budgets and spend a lot of money? Trump spent a lot of money while he was president, for sure. And I have no sort of hope that he will not spend a lot of money. I'm sure he's going to still continue to spend money, even in the midst of COVID. While they spent a lot of money, which much of that money led to his downfall because it funded drop boxes. But he signed those bills. He was still pitching things like the Platinum Plan. The man was ready to spend more and more money, and I never thought he wouldn't spend a lot of money. He pees in golden toilets, just as kind of dude he is. But I expected that he would still fight for other things that were important to me, one of them being the life issue. So, yeah, you look past a lot of different flaws because he's a fighter. He's supposed to fight for the things that other people wouldn't fight for because he's not a choker. And but here he is, basically running from this issue because he's a chicken and he's scared. But So there's not that fiscal responsibility there that we want there. He's afraid to touch things like do any sort of entitlement reform. He's promised to not do that. And I know people really, really, want their Social Security and other stuff like that. But at some point, someone's going to have to deal with it because it's not going to be able to exist forever. There's issues, guys. So there's quite a few positions that he's taken that it's like, bruh, because he doesn't want to rock the boat. Even the stuff with COVID and not getting rid of Fauci because he didn't want the media and other folks to talk about him too much, go at him too hard. He didn't want to hear people's mouths. He didn't want to impact his poll numbers. And it impacted how he led in the past year of his presidency. Or when he said, we can take the guns, do due process later. I forget what was going on that made him say that. And Mike Pence was looking like, bruh, like you gotta have due process. And so he's so the red flag law that Biden signed that was built bipartisan, would Trump have signed that? I don't know. Maybe. Maybe. So Trump, he doesn't have he doesn't have some kind of defined ideology. He doesn't, and I never thought that he did. So I'm not totally surprised, and he probably figures that well, he's doing what he can to win, and I understand that, but he needs to at least not undermine the pro-life laws. Now in Arizona, I kind of think I think people should fight to the best of their ability. But I think whatever referendum that they make, that it's probably going to pass because it's a purplish kind of state. But in the case of Florida, they have to cross a 60% threshold, and I would like to think that Ron DeSantis is going to, and the Republicans there will lead a much stronger campaign than what was able to be done in Michigan and other places. So, because Ohio didn't have a great effort to stop their ballot thing for abortion either. So I would like to hope that there's a chance that it won't pass in Florida, but I think those chances get real slim when you have the man who's the top of the ticket who said that that 6-week bans are terrible, even though there's all these exceptions that he says that they need. So, is it okay that we're kind of reforming the party into basically into a lot of positions, a moderate Dem position? And you can say, well, the immigration, well, Dems used to be like not totally open borders like they used to. So we're just basically where the Dems were in, like, I don't know, 2008 or something. We're basically there. And I don't want to get any further than, and the thing about compromising so much is that eventually, people just like to stick with the devil they know. You have to be some kind of contrast, and you have to make the case for why you're different and why you're better. Not why you're, a watered down version of the bad. They'll just, again, stick with the devil that they know. So I'm disappointed with Trump. I'm disappointed with Kari Lake. And my heart goes out to Arizona and the pro-life community out there. But do your darndest. But it must suck to have Trump and Kari Lake pushing down on you, telling you to make it so more babies are killed. So not happy. Not happy. They're both pretty much pro-choice. If you're telling people you must follow your heart instead of do what's right, then you got a problem. That is the pro-choice position. And that's basically what Pearl was saying when she had her debate with Michael Knowles. Like, I don't tell men what to do, and she said she was chastising him. She's like, do you really think men shouldn't do what's best for them or what makes the most sense in their mind? And he's like, no, men should do what's right. We should be encouraging people to do what's right, even when it's hard for them, to still do the right thing. Not just because what's right for what they want, their desires. Follow your heart. The heart is deceitful. The heart is deceitful. So, anyway. Let's move on. We'll very quickly go through this. So Gina Carano, some time ago, she got fired from Disney. She used to play on The Mandalorian. And Deadline reported about the case that she's having with Disney. So Elon Musk some time ago said that they would help people who were fired if they posted something on X. So Gina was like a prime candidate for that. Because she got fired for a post that she made on Twitter. Now, I think the real reason why Disney wanted to get rid of her is because she ticked off the Alphabet Mafia, and she would not appropriately do the sufficient humiliation rituals. Sorry about that. Because they were pressuring her and pressuring people to put pronouns in their bios, and she wouldn't put pronouns in her bios. And so she said beep, bop, boop, wrote a post about that. And which are like droid noises. And so people were angry. So Disney reached out to her and they wanted her to do this special kind of apology. And she's like, okay, I can basically she wouldn't make her case. She didn't want to do something that was fake or whatever. And so they wanted her to get on a Zoom call, I think with like 40 LGBT people. And it sounded like have a struggle session where they just kind of yell at the white woman. And she's like, how about I take a few of them out to dinner and they can look into my eyes, I can look into their eyes. And Disney just didn't like how she was not just rolling over and vomiting all over herself. So according to Gina, that they basically dropped contact after that. So I kind of think that she probably wasn't in their hearts and minds to continue working at Disney at that point. But Gina, you know, really didn't like a lot of stuff going on during the pandemic. And so she had posted a tweet that referenced the Holocaust, kind of like, which in this article that we'll get to from Deadline, maybe I'll just read that from my phone so I don't have to switch back and forth. It really wasn't a disrespectful, but Disney made it seem like she had said something bad about Jews themselves. So they really libeled her out the door while they fired her. So to me, I'm like, this is a terrible PR situation that they have going for them with Gina. And so we'll see if she has a case, but they definitely want to kind of to be thrown out. But she said Disney has confirmed what has been known all along. They will fire you if you say anything they disagree with, even if they have to misrepresent, malign, and mischaracterize you to do it. They are now on record letting everyone who works for them know that if Disney will take any chance they can get to control what you say, what you think, or they will attempt to destroy your career. Glad we cleared that up. The First Amendment does not allow Disney to want only discriminate, which is what they have done in my case, and frankly have now admitted they did. If you ever wanted to know what today's Disney values are, they just told you. So just FYI, Pedro Pascal, who was also in the same show with her, did also post memes and other things with involving the Holocaust and in political messaging here. So he's hashtag This Is America, and so they had Germany 1944 versus America 2018. And it's amazing how it's 2018, as if as Trump would say, who built those cages, Joe? Who built those cages? So nothing ever happened to Pedro. As a matter of fact, he just gets, deal after deal after deal after deal. He's gonna be Mr. Fantastic, which I'm not gonna watch that movie. He's gonna be in the new Gladiator film, apparently. I'm really over Pedro Pascal, though he was, great in a lot of different things, but I'm just, like, enough is enough. But anyway, Disney had enough. In a filing Tuesday night to dismiss Gina Carano's wrongful discharge and sex discrimination lawsuit, I don't know where the sex discrimination comes in, over being fired from The Mandalorian. The Mouse House states the former MMA fighter lost her Star Wars series job in 2021 because her decision to publicly trivialize the Holocaust by comparing criticism of political conservatives to the annihilation of millions of Jewish people, notably not thousands, was the final straw for Disney. Seeking a June 12 hearing in the federal court in downtown Los Angeles before Judge Sherilyn Peace Garnett, the Daniel Petrocelli represented Disney insists the Elon Musk-backed action should be tossed out on grounds that Disney has a constitutional right not to associate its artistic expression with Carano's speech, such as the First Amendment provides a complete defense to Carano's claims, claiming her words were consistently twisted to demoralize and dehumanize me as an alt-right wing extremist during a very public dispute 3 years ago. Carano took the Bob Iger run company to court in early February to get back her high-profile Mandalorian role of Rebel Ranger Cara Dune in the TIE Fighter full of damages, along with fellow defendants Lucasfilm and Huckleberry Industries. Disney made it clear this week that you don't need to be a Jedi Master to know that's not going to happen. The company detailed the way it all went down fast with Carano and their April filing. So this was February 10th, 2021. On that day, she reposted an Instagram post from a user, Warrior Priest Jim podcast. The post read, Jews were beaten in the streets not by Nazi soldiers, but by their neighbors, even by children. Because history is edited, most people today don't realize that to get to the point where Nazi soldiers could easily round up thousands of Jews, the government first made their own neighbors hate them simply for being Jews. How is that any different from hating someone for their political views? Disney had enough. The same day, Carano grotesquely trivialized the Holocaust as comparable to sharp political disagreements, Lucasfilm announced that Gina Carano is not currently employed by Lucasfilm, and there are no plans for her to be in the future. Nevertheless, her social media posts denigrating people based on their cultural and religious identities are abhorrent and unacceptable. A month later, Disney's former CEO explained that Carano's views didn't align with the company values, including its values of respect, values of decency, values of integrity, and value of inclusion. So this is the issue here, where they said her posts were denigrating people based on their cultural and religious identities. She clearly didn't do that. She clearly did not do that. Now, if they had an issue of her trivializing it because she shared this post that said thousands and not millions, maybe she didn't. I mean, maybe she didn't really think about that. I this is the first time I kind of thought about it, and I've covered the story a few times. But the point of the post is that they make people are kind of indoctrinated to the point of where they will alienate, come after people, and be cruel to them. And it starts with like the normal folks, your neighbors, before it gets to the point where it's like the party in place actually doing those terrible things. So if you remember COVID and basically how they were turning neighbor against neighbor, and some elected officials were telling people to confront their neighbors, and people were very angry about having to mask and lose their jobs and stay home and other things like that. And then they would call you grandma killer if you wouldn't comply, if you wouldn't wear a mask, if you wouldn't get vaccinated. And they really were tearing people apart, turning them against each other. It wasn't good. So I thought her point was valid. And even she wasn't saying that, it's comparable, like it's equal to the Holocaust or something. And it's kind of more like the lead up of it, as opposed to the tragedy itself of, them actually going and doing the murdering. But it just wasn't what they explained that it was. Like how did she denigrate people based on their cultural and religious identities by that post? And if her crime was belittling it because she made the comparison, then how is Pedro Pascal still able to do things with Disney? If what she did was so terrible. So we'll see how all that goes. But what were the charts? I don't know how the sex discrimination comes in there. I don't know if she's going to say because they did it to her and not to Pedro. But I don't think that has anything to do with sex discrimination. That's clearly she might know things. She definitely knows things we don't know. She definitely knows things that we don't know. So maybe there's other pieces to it that we're unaware of. A wrongful charge and a sex discrimination lawsuit. We'll see how that goes. But Disney was totally in the wrong here. But that's obviously a huge legal titan, and they're not gonna want her to win. That doesn't mean they can't lose, but they're definitely not gonna want her to win. Anyway, thank you guys. Oh my gosh, I'm looking through like some of these comments. What you guys going back and forth? Oh gosh. Someone, that Wendy lady said something about the reality is that babies are returned to the Lord. when they are murdered, those are that those that are alive and are tortured are the ones who need greater fighter for them. Uh, um, so it's not just there is a justice aspect to the ban situation. That's why a lot of abolitionists, I think, are kind of taken off. Frankly, I lean more toward them, but but there's also like the idea that we should be protecting the life, and life itself is valuable, which the Bible teaches as well. Uh if you think the end goal is you going to heaven and that's just all that matters, it's really not. So, which I talk about in my book, of course, God is blatantly against abortion. So I would urge her to check that out. You guys had quite the conversation. Quite the conversation indeed. People can choose to fight for whatever they want to fight for. So if people are very passionate about the life issue, which we see as a and you know, it's really not just about the abortion issue. It expands more than that. A lot of times people ask like, well, how does it affect you? I once wrote an article about the societal harm of abortion. That's on my website. You guys can check it out. And I did cover that a bit in my book. But there's more aspects to it than even I was when I wrote that book, or that I've been thinking about lately. I guess I tapped into this a little bit before, but and I don't have time to really dive deep into these thoughts, but I'll just, I guess, let it say a little bit and let it stew on your brain, and maybe we'll go deeper into it later. But they, in order to keep abortion alive, it really requires you to not, even if you want the child, for them to not be a person. You're telling the government, hey, government, our children are our womb, they're not children and they don't have rights. And I caution people because I'm like, okay, what happens when the government says, remember you said that? Remember that you said that, in case one day they, I don't know, want to do a one child or two child policy and have to force you to coerce you into termination or something like that. That would never happen here. Okay, if you say so. I didn't think America would descend toward the madness we had in 2020 so fast, but it happened. And it wasn't so long ago that Buck versus Bell happened and other moral atrocities like that. So I wouldn't put it past you climate freaks. I really wouldn't. Or if there's other situations. So but the point is, you're telling the government that your child doesn't have any rights in your womb, even if they're wanted. And there have been situations like in Colorado some years ago, there was a drunk driver who had ran into a woman, and she ended up living, but she lost her baby, and her baby was like 38, 39 weeks. And so they tried to pass a bill because this guy wasn't going to get in trouble for killing her baby. There wasn't going to be like some kind of criminal legal ramifications for that. And the pro-choice lobby was like, this is a backdoor to personhood. We can't have that. And the baby was like 38, 39 weeks. Was it could have been born, but they still couldn't have it. And I think there was another case in Colorado, because I watched last night them talk about the case when they were like talking about passing the legislation and it failed. A legislator brought up a situation where there was a woman who was shot and the baby was killed, and that person wasn't charged for the baby being shot, and Planned Parenthood was like, well, I assume they weren't meaning to purposely kill the baby or purposely kill the fetus. So who cares, right? So it requires us, even if you want the child, so your choice really has to be washed away. They say it's your choice, but they actually have to strip the baby of the personhood. That's where the logical conclusion to many of the stuff happens. Colorado, they never, you can have an abortion, third trimester, no medical issue. They're very radical out there, and they would not even give any sort of consideration for a child who is like 39 weeks along. So that's a repercussion of the world that we're building. Or when I was talking to an ethics professor about abortion, and he was, pro choice and stuff, and he was pretty, being pretty rude. I still haven't got. I read through his book, which wasn't good in my opinion, but I haven't done a video about it yet, and I should. I talked about it a little bit, but I was gonna do like a full deep dive. But I asked him about this case where there's this woman named Remy Lee, and her baby was in the first trimester. She found out she was pregnant. Her boyfriend didn't want the baby, and so he tricked her. His dad was a doctor, whatever. He gave her some pills, and she thought they're, I don't know, prenatal vitamins or something. I don't remember exactly the details, but she didn't think that they were going to kill her baby, and they did. And so he ended up getting charged for it. And so I asked him, like, did he kill someone? And he said no. They don't think that was murder, even though she wanted the baby. Because it's not a person or whatever, because they haven't reached that level of consciousness yet. So even if the child is wanted, we are telling the government that our babies don't have rights. And not only should they not be protected against violence, that there should be no justice for them if something happens, even if they're wanted. So that is something that does affect the whole population. So you being pro-choice in Colorado, and your abortions and your need and your desires to fight them, and NARAL and Planned Parenthood, etc., stopped a mother from getting justice when she lost her nearly basically full-term baby. So we can't pretend that there's not societal harm in supporting this ideology. Or even go back to the Alabama court case with the IVF and people flipping out, like, it's not a person. How dare you want these parents to be able to sue the clinic for wrongful death after they allowed someone to destroy their embryos that they put a lot of time and money in, I'm sure. And they wanted civil damages, not even criminal. But even that is too great of a risk if it would lead to personing a baby. So, yeah, it affects people. It really affects people. So it's not just about just stopping them from being like, oh, they're in heaven. It's deeper than that. And if you don't have a good grasp on the life issue, you lose perspective about a lot of different other ones. You do. But I really, on a side note, I really don't appreciate it, because I've been to many rallies. I've heard many speeches from the president, including when he was sworn in, and he always talks about, the dignity and rights and stuff being afforded to, everyone, even, born and unborn. And yet here we are. Anyway, thank you guys. I hope you enjoyed the show. Please go to blacktnews.com, check out different content on my website, articles, videos, etc. If you like what I do here, you guys can leave a donation on the website and check out different merch as well. I hope you guys enjoy your weekend. If you haven't filed your taxes yet, make sure you do that tonight or tomorrow. God bless you guys. I'll see you Monday.